Active time battle was an evolution of the classic turn-based. This means each party member would have to wait their turn to use a command dictated by the time it takes for the bar to fill up. Final Fantasy IX was the last game in the mainline series to use traditional stand in one place and wait while commanding all party members' actions. It was also the only PS1 era Final Fantasy to feature 4 party members in combat at one time. Final Fantasy has taken a more action style to its combat with Final Fantasy 15 and 16, as well as Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth. But the ATB DNA has remained in place for all those titles, such as a segmented ATB bar that fills up, allowing for you to press down L1 and issue commands to your otherwise non-playable party members. Clive's iconic abilities needing time to recharge after using them, and of course, charging ATB bars in Final Fantasy VII Remake Rebirth with regular attacks in order to use the more significant commands. I've said this in the previous video, but if Final Fantasy IX were to be remade, ATB just fits perfectly with the Final Fantasy IX DNA, which was to pay homage to classic Final Fantasy when it launched on the PS1 in 2000, and this was after the cyberpunk, steampunk, futuristic, serious style of Final Fantasy VII and VIII. Final Fantasy IX was meant to be a return to roots sort of thing. So fast forward 25 years later, and we have Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, which gave us this masterful hybrid of classic Final Fantasy ATB mixed with a modern action game. And in my opinion, it is not only the best combat the series has ever had, but honestly, it's my favorite combat system in any video game. So I would not be at all upset if Final Fantasy IX Remake were to adapt this combat system and make tweaks to fit Final Fantasy IX's uniqueness of like 4 party members, the trance system, abilities learned through equipment, etc. But in the DNA of Final Fantasy VII, it was to redefine and evolve. So it totally makes sense for a Final Fantasy VII Remake to attempt to do that again, and they freaking succeeded with that. But I think we should set our expectations of a Final Fantasy IX Remake being ATB. After all, we have to assume that Yoshi P knows a Final Fantasy IX Remake, if it were in fact in the works. And he's likely telling the truth that his team is not working on it, but I couldn't imagine he'd be throwing shade at the team that is when he says, you know, people were speculating and some were arguing that they don't want him to do it because they don't want action-based. Yoshi P said if he or anyone were to do it, they would of course do turn-based. There's no way he'd be throwing shade at that development team that is remaking Final Fantasy IX. So I think we all need to just assume that it is going to be ATB turn-based. So let's envision what a remake of Final Fantasy IX could be like using traditional ATB. And for that, I look at the recent reveal of Expedition 33, which is using turn-based combat, not ATB, but the visuals are absolutely stunning, and even though the characters are standing still and waiting for their turn, there's still this sense of energy and motion that makes it feel like an action game. This is complemented by the intense scale of the enemies and the stylish camera work. Of course, there hasn't been any hands-on gameplay to further analyze, but Expedition 33 seems to be showcasing what a Final Fantasy would look like if it went back to turn-based. Of course, this is Final Fantasy IX we're talking about, a world of whimsy and super deformed cartoon-like characters, so we don't need it to look insanely realistic like Expedition 33 over here. Rather, it wouldn't feel out of place in that Unreal Engine 5 cartoonish style that we've come to know in games like Fortnite. But look no further than the Memoria project for exactly how I would love the game to look, regardless if it's third-person camera like this, or fixed camera. It is simply perfect. Take those visuals and add the cinematic flair of Expedition 33's combat to get a style that I think would appeal to a wide range of gamers. You see, I want Final Fantasy IX to reach as many gamers as possible. Fans of 9 are already going to be sold on it, especially if it is ATB and a more faithful remake of the original game, and there's more on that topic in an upcoming video. But what is special about a potential Final Fantasy IX remake is that it will allow Final Fantasy fans who grew up during the PS1 era, starting with Final Fantasy VII and 8, and perhaps overlooking 9 because of the very appealing next-gen Final Fantasy X, like I said in the previous video, go back and watch that if you like, for more on that, but maybe even Final Fantasy fans who started with 10 or after, and never even played Final Fantasy IX, or maybe they had to go back and play Final Fantasy IX after experiencing a more modern Final Fantasy. But also another important demographic is the modern gamer. How do you make ATB or turn-based look sexy, right? How do you get those players to go try it out? That answer was, of course, found in Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, but only after significant compromises were made to meet halfway. Let's be real though, those of us who know, we know. ATB, turn-based, it's freaking fantastic. It's so fun, but I just kind of want this to appeal to everyone. How do we make Final Fantasy IX Remake appeal to everyone while keeping the traditional ATB system? Comment, please. Comment on this video. I look forward to reading your replies. I think one day I will probably do a video where I just read through your replies and comment on them live through a video format, because it is kind of hard to sit down and just reply to everyone. Even though I read all of them, I want to reply to all of you. I want to respond and you know, engage in that conversation with you. So maybe I'll just do a whole video like answering your questions or reading your thoughts, especially on this topic here: faithful remakes versus a one-to-one remake versus you know, the remake in a meta sense, and you know, all this other stuff. So basically the topic of remakes. So I want your opinion, especially when it comes to story. How much of this needs to be extremely faithful? How much of it needs to change, like Amarant, for example? But basically, what would you like to see expanded upon if they are to kind of go that route of saying like, hey, we're going to add a little bit more, but we're keeping everything exactly the same? Like I said in the video, they could make a Final Fantasy IX remake for fans of Final Fantasy IX, and there you go. You're happy. But let's be honest, that's not how the business works. You want it to sell to everyone. All right. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care now. Bye-bye then.